dear friend Claudia to join us here today. You can adjust
Just a little bit because I'm a little smaller. So, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
What a great opportunity of being back here, right? Such a beautiful place. And for those that are online, and if you can, I would invite you next time to be in person because it's so great to be together. And although it's awesome to be online and listening to all these studies that we do in the house, but that makes a difference when we are in person, exchanging these vibrations in this energy that we all have. And today I'm going to be talking about a message from Chico Xavier, given by the Spirit Emmanuel. It is in the book Courage and is entitled Your Difficulties. And as always, Emmanuel, when he's giving a message, he is sharing with us warnings, advices for the path we are on. And he frequently kind of push, right, our ears to listen more and to do more, because many times what we see happening is we are not taking the lessons that we learn here. And of course life gives us as well, because it would be unfair to say just spiritists receive messages, right? It's everywhere, every religion, and even if a person is not related to a religion, but life itself give us this opportunity to learn. And of course being here give us these extra messages, extra learning experience, so we have to take that in account and listen to this kind of advices, because it does help us to achieve what we are here for. And this message from Emmanuel, it starts saying, imagine how difficult it would be to bear a school in which the students only knew how to cry when being taught. We refer to this image to consider Earth as our multimillenary school. It is urgent to receive its difficulties as lessons, accepting its usefulness and purpose. And we're going to explore a little bit those paragraphs that from this message. And I love this comparison that we find so often in Spiritism, comparing Earth to a school and us spirits in learning process as students. And when you think about this symbolism, this Earth as school makes so much sense, because as a student enters in the educational system, it starts from a point that knows nothing and go learning, experiencing each grade until reach a point that they don't longer need to be studying in the school system per se, because they have achieved everything. So now they are co-creating, they are participating in life. I would say continue learning, but so first from a different perspective, right? But we're down here, kind of in the beginning of the process, more than towards the middle, right? And if we think about how strange it would be to find a student in a school that only cries, that only complains about the lessons that need to learn. You're learning how to read and you're crying, oh, but this is so difficult. Might be difficult, and yet how much more you're going to open through your eyes and seeing in life after you learn that. And that's what Emmanuel tells us and warn us, because many times what we see is ourselves complaining about the experiences that we are having in here. And it's not invalidating the emotion, it's not invalidating the sufferings, because sometimes the sufferings can be great, the pain can be great. What is to lose a person, maybe a son, maybe a mother? It's difficult experiences. How it is sometimes to go without having a food in the table, and how difficult it is when you're living in a country that is in war, for example. So it's not invalidating the pain, it's not invalidating the suffering, but it's to think about, what am I learning from this? What is in this lesson that I can take as an eternal spirit? What is in these lessons that I can take so the day of tomorrow, I don't need to go through that again? There is a question in the Spirit book, 267, if I'm not wrong, that tells us, And let me see here. 261. Must the spirit, in the course of its early journey, undergo every sort of temptation? And you're going to continue talking about that, but the spirit says certainly not. What happened is many times, as we learn from life, we make mistakes. And with these mistakes, open up a Pandora box. And we start going through other things that we did not necessarily go through. We did not need to necessarily go through. And we go because of the mistakes. I'm going to make a little comparison here that is maybe easier for parents to understand. When the kids are in early times in school, they have this program that they need to do homework, right? And I'm not a parent, so I don't remember the name. I think it's Ready or something like that it's called. And every time the student is learning from that software, if they make a mistake, open a series of other exercises to do. So life is kind of like that. You make a mistake, now you're opening space for more things to go through. Let me give you an example that is more close to us. If you are intolerant and you meet someone that push your buttons, you most likely you're gonna engage in some type of conflict. And when you do that, that might open a series of other problems in your life. So that's what the Spirit says in here. We don't need to go through everything. But every time we don't learn a lesson, every time we make mistakes, we might see ourselves into a difficult pattern because we will need to deal with other situations that we might not needed to go through in the beginning. So let's think about every time that we don't learn to be patient, every time that we don't use tolerance, every time that we point fingers to others, we will be opening space for ourselves to be pointed out. We're going to open a space for us to go through an experience that other people are going to be intolerant to us as well. So just for us to think about, we are in a school system called Earth, and we will go through a series of learning experiences. Not everything we need to go through, but if we are going through that, it has a meaning. It has a purpose. It is useful for us to learn something. Again, not invalidating the pain, not invalidating the suffering. But if we look at that as a challenge in our lives, that will be probably easier for us to go through. And then Emmanuel continues saying, in the face of obstacles, no one needs to focus on the dark side they present. A castaway, hungry for stability at the mercy of the waves, will not remember to examine the mud at the bottom of the waters, but will reflect on the best way to reach dry land. And that is very important, because how many times do we focus on the negative? How many times we focus on the problem and don't look for the solutions? So what he says in here is, all of us have a dark side. It does not mean we need to be just looking for the virtue, because we will not learn just watching a spirit of light on how they do it. We need to look at that. The question 625, who is our guide and model? Jesus. So yes, we need to look at that, but also we need to turn around and look to ourselves and look what is missing. What do we need in order to get there? What are we doing wrong that we need to correct? So it's a little bit of both. We need to look around to kind of see where we are, but then look forward. It's like it says in here, let's not focus on the dark side. Let's look for the solutions. What do I need to grow? What do I need to achieve? What do I need to leave the point where I am? And in psychology, there is something called positive psychology, which people took it wrongly as magical thinking. Oh, I'm not positive. I don't like to think on the positive, because then what if something happens and the negative occurs and I'm not prepared? Well, the positive is not for us to magically think that life is going to be great if we just expected the great things to happen, but it's to look into solutions of the problems that we are experiencing. Okay, this is the negative. What about the positives? Let me go midway, because the negative might happen, and I want to be prepared for that. But also, what if the positive happens? Am I prepared for that? How do I know towards a direction that I'm not looking forward? An example for those that ride a bike: if you're riding a bike and constantly you look into the sidewalk, where you're going to be ending at? The sidewalk. So you don't want to be looking at the sidewalk. You want to be looking at the road you're going through. And now and then looking to make sure that you have a certain distance from the sidewalk. So you want to look at there, but it's a quick look. So it's the same. We want to look and remember St. Augustine, when St. Augustine tells us at the end of the day, I will check my life, right? I think everyone here have heard that already, because we mentioned that so many times, right? It's the recipe. If we could do that at the end of the day, figure out the goods and bads of the day, we will be in so much better condition, because we will look where we are and where we want to be. And that will make us easier to find the solutions necessary to go to where we want to go. And there is a book called Jesus in Our Days, in which Divaldo Franco, by the spirits of Joana de Angelis, she talks about the same thing Emmanuel talks about. He tells, don't focus on the dark side, on our dark side, and she will be saying about the same. Don't crucify yourselves in the conscience of guilt after recognizing your mistakes. Don't lock yourself in shadows after you've identified your crimes. Don't be too bitter, finding yourself wrong. Reborn from your rubble and recover immediately, avoiding future expiatory returns, excruciating injunctions, painful situations. How many times as we got ourselves into wrongdoing and we just stay there? Oh, I did this, or I'm a horrible person. And then we kind of rejoice on just telling ourselves what a bad person we are, right? And what do we take from that? Oh, but I'm not going to recognize my bad. Yes, I do look into what I did wrong, right? Wow, this is my wrongdoings. This is my vices. What do I need to do to become better? Another question from the Spirit's book. There is a vice that is too strong that will not allow us to succeed. And the Spirit's going to answer, no, you can overcome all the vices. And they continue for our desperation. We just need a little bit of effort. And that, I think, kills us, right? Because we think that we need so much effort to get away from our vices. And that's not true. Of course, there are some times that we rejoice so much in that path that makes it difficult to recover from it. Sometimes the desires, sometimes the pleasures that we take from that, it's too great for that moment. We overcome. We want the pleasure, even if the consequence is a bad one. And that's why sometimes it's so difficult to overcome it. But if we think about and if we work, what is better for me? Do I really want to be in this situation? Do I really need to be in this situation? What do I need to do in order to overcome all that? And work hard, because if it is a pleasure, if it is something that we are rejoicing in it, it might be difficult to overcome it if we don't really put an effort into it. And the Spirit tells us, let's make an effort. Let's do an effort to succeed. And then we will be able to do so. Every minute of complaining, continues Emmanuel, is a wasted minute, ruining precious potential for the solution of problems over which we are laying lamentation. Every test, whatever it may be, appears on the road in order to strengthen our strength and perfect our experience, calling again and warning us about these lamentations, this complaining that we engage so much. And if we look ourselves, how many times we complain, right? Oh, it's so hard. Oh, but look how things are. And we love to transfer our responsibility to others because that makes it easy, right? But when we transfer the responsibility, are we doing anything? Are we making an effort to change the situation? Oh, but that's nothing I can do. It depends on the government. It depends on society. It depends, right? And every time we say that, what happened? We take away our responsibility into the problem that we are experiencing. Oh, look at society. But whose society? Aren't we part of it? So if we think that society is wrong, what is wrong with society? If I'm not engaging in that wrongdoing, fantastic. That's great. But that's not enough. We need to do the right thing. And if we are not doing the right thing, then there is a problem because we are being connivent. Connivent? Yes, right? With the situation. So we need to do different. What can we do different? And it's not engaging in conflict. And sometimes it's not even go there and say, oh, you're wrong. Sometimes silence, it is the hardest thing. And yet is the most needed, especially nowadays. Because situations are so conflictive that even if you are absolutely right, which most likely we are not, but let's say that for some reason we are 100% right. Are you going to talk with a person that is not listening? Do you really think that they will change? They won't. Jesus could not change everyone. How dare we think that we are going to be changing the world? We can change one step at a time. And this step is our way of living our lives. If we could be a tiny bit of an example to someone, maybe that someone will change something in their lives and they also will be a model for somebody else. And then that keep on going until we can change. But just engage in conflicts, that works nothing. And actually the other way around, because in the book of Nosula, they are talking about the Second World War, and they talk how the incarnated spirits, the ones that was already here incarnated, they were making worse the war, the probability of war, just by thinking about the war, just by engaging in thoughts that were conflictive. As a spiritist, we know how important our thoughts are. So every time we engage in a type of thoughts that projects conflict, projects anger, projects even irritation, whatever it is the feeling, if it is not love, we are adding our tiny bit of problem into the situations that is already existing out there. If we could put a drop of water or a drop of love in that conflict, might not make any difference. But if you think that there is a lot of people dropping a tiny bit of love in that situation, and the more people doing that, the less the conflict, the less the hatred, the less is the situations that we are going through. What happens is, and I tell about myself, that sometimes I'm start doing a prayer for the world, and it says, oh, there's so much thing going on, and my thought got short, and my prayer does not go all the way to the end because now I'm engaging in this conflict. I can remember situations that I have seen in TV. I can remember situations that people told me about, and I say, oh, and we cut the most important thing, it is the prayer. Sometimes that's nothing we can do, and if that's true, a prayer will be a great thing. If you look around, that's nothing, absolutely nothing you can do, then pray, because you are doing that little drop of love, a little drop of light right there. There is this saying, if you're in absolute darkness, even a tiny bit light, you're going to make a huge difference. And that's what we can do. We don't have a strong light within ourselves, but we can share a little bit of a light, a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of love in order to make this world that is in such a need of love to be a place a little bit better. It is so important we are here today. And if we think about these pandemics, this almost 3 years that we went through, I think that's such a difference between before and now. Can you even think about yourself before the pandemics? What kind of things we were doing? What kind of things we were thinking? What kind of things we believed at the time? And then after those almost 3 years, what are we doing? What are we thinking? Are we a different person? Because first of all, if we are not a different person, that's not a good sign, right? So we need to rethink about it. 3 years, and we can consider these 3 years maybe like 3 decades, because there was such a difference between before and after. We broke so many paradigms. We learned so many things. We learned that we could be distant from each other and yet connected. Although I must warn in here, for sure, Emmanuel will talk a lot better than me, but I can 100% guarantee you that if you are online, and let me tell you that you are online, if you're not sitting, or if you're not 100% paying attention on what he's saying, most likely you're not as connected as you think you are. What happened and what we see and what we did is sometimes we were listening to the lectures and watching something and doing something else, eating. And what happened when we multitask? We have this false idea that we can multitask without losing anything. And that's not true. When we are multitasking, we have our attention here and we have at least part of our attention on something else. And this part of attention of something else, it's taken away, especially from our spiritual learning. Because where are you? Where your thoughts are. So if your thoughts are here, you're listening to the lecture. Something happened in there, you lost something that was important. Maybe that was important that was said, and you lost it. Oh, but I can listen in later. That's true. And you might learn from that. But can you imagine the energy that was present there in the moment when the lecture was happening? Oh, but I can always watch later. That's true. And you will learn later. But you're not going to be connected with all the souls that what was at that moment listening to that lecture or to that study and connected by soul, by vibration, by energy. And that is the biggest difference. You can learn from that lecture, but you cannot receive the same as you would receive at that moment. When 2 or 3 people are in my name, I will be there. What if it's just you listening to the lecture? Are you together with other ones? Probably not. And don't take me wrong. I mean, when we are studying, fantastic. But when we are together, and I don't know if you have experienced that, you sit down with a group and you read a book, and suddenly your mind will open up and nobody have talked yet about. You're the first one reading the paragraph and you understood something from home if you have read it before. And as soon as you are in the group and you start reading it, and new ideas come to your mind. And that's the power of the group. And we have learned that even in a distance, we can be connected. So that thought, that energy, you are receiving it. But if you're not connected with the group at that moment, what would you receive? So we think about being online. You could not watch the lecture, the study, and the moment that was, please, by all means, watch it again. But know that you are missing something, that you're not 100% connected to that group that participated that day. And it makes such a difference being together, being thinking about the same topic in a group than when we are separated. How about when someone may make a comment that expands so much, even if the person says something wrong, because you say, I don't think that is correct. And immediately you start being sure why the other way is the right one and not what the person is talking about. So let us take a moment really to, instead of complaining about so much of things that is going on, and being lazy, because I confess, when I needed to go back in person, I was like, that was so easy, right? You're just doing everything you need, and then on the moment of the online study, you jump in front of the computer, you watch it, and then you left. You did not need to get the traffic. You did not need to do anything. But how much are we not taking from the experience of being here? So think that again. And going back in here, once again, Emmanuel talks about looking for solutions and not for the problems. We need to look at the problems to solve, but if we are focused only the problems, how are we going to be able to solve the problem? And we see that this seems to be a common theme around all of us. The majority of us, we look too much for the problems, for the issues, and we look too little for the solutions. And usually those people that are capable of solving problems quickly, what they are doing? Looking for solutions, not for the problems. Oh, but it's happening. Okay, let me see what we need to do. And focus in there. Yes, you need to know what you're working on, but we need to look for solutions. We need to be that open mind. We need to have that capacity to know that for every problem, there is a solution. But the problem is here. The solution is one step ahead, one level up. And in order to get the solution for this problem, we need to go up one level. And when we do that, wow, so much more things happen to us. So let's be really opening our eyes and our minds for this next level, for this probability of being able to solve all the problems. We have that thing of doing the same thing and expecting a different results, right? If you're going to go to some place and you're going to take the same road, maybe you're going to get all the traffic lights in green. But what is the probability that every time you're going to not take at least one red? So if you leave your home with the exact amount of time to get where you want to go, and if one light is red, are you going to get there in the same time? No. But every time we do the same, right? We leave at the same time and we get there late. And the other time, and then one time we get all the lights green and says, yes, and the next time, not again. So let's think about that. What can we do to solve the problems? What can we do to look for the solutions in life? And sometimes it's easier than we think. It's just we are so used to do things the same way over and over again that we don't look forward for that. And also, when we are complaining and when we are just focusing on the problems, that's something very interesting that happened to us. And we talk a lot about is the lack of faith, right? Because it is true that we are going through problems and we are here to learn with these challenges. And let's change the word problems for challenges, and that already make a difference, right? We are here to learn from these challenges of life. And if we know we are in this boat and this boat is going to go through difficult routes and we're going to be experiencing some storms along the way, but if we know the one that is driving the boat is Jesus, then we should be like, okay, we're going to have some tough experiences in here, but hey, I believe in who's taking the boat to the next port, right? But we forget that. And that's okay. I mean, we are not in that level of have our faith in the size of the mustard seed, not yet. But if we are able to remind ourselves who is driving that boat, who is the person responsible for Earth, then might make a little bit easier to go through the storms that we will be experiencing in life. And if we go to the Spiritist Magazine Journal of Psychological Studies in 1864, Kardec in the chapter says, our Father prayer developed, and he wrote the item 3, your will be done on earth as is in heaven. If submission, Kardec explored, if submission is a duty of the Son to the Father, from the inferior to his superior, how much more must not be the submission of the creature to the Creator? Do as you wish, Lord, is to observe your laws and abide by them, without moaning against your divine designs. Mankind will submit to them when understand that you are the sources of every wisdom and that without you nothing is possible. Your will shall then be done on earth as with the elected ones in heaven. If we think about ourselves as a spiritist, do we know what spiritism tells us? Do we know the laws, the divine laws there are that Jesus brought and the spiritism explore? Because if we do, and we believe righteously, that means we're not just reading the books. We are not just getting the Spirit's book, opening and reading all the 1019 questions. No, we are understanding those questions. Oh, love your enemy. That one is difficult. How can I love my enemy if it is difficult sometimes to love the friends, right? The parents, the brothers and sisters? How am I going to love the enemy? But if we understand what that means, if we righteously understand what that means, we will maybe not love the enemy, because yes, it's a tough lesson, but we will look forward how to approach as much as possible that lesson, because we know why. We know the consequences if we don't. We know that our enemy is actually our brothers, but not following the laws, right? The divine laws. And how many times have we not followed the divine laws? Oh, but it's totally different. I don't go out killing people. Well, that's true. Maybe not in this life, but maybe in the previous one we did. So that person and that particular area of their lives are not yet on the point that we are. So we need to take that deep breath and say, Lord, I cannot really love them, but I will leave into your hands to do the justice that that person deserves. Not to go through a difficult time, not wishing that person to live in hell, right? Because they have done something wrong. But to allow God to look into what that spirit needs, what kind of experiences they need to go through in order to understand not to go against the law. And the same happens to us. What do we need not to go against the laws? If it's easy for us to point the fingers, well, let's point the fingers to ourselves. And not being there, right? Just stuck in that feeling of guilty, on that pointing our dark sides. But let's look for the solutions so we can get out of the situation we are and have a better time, so to speak. Learn to the experience. So Emmanuel will continue. In short, almost every difficulty implies suffering, and every suffering, especially those that we do not provoke, results in renewal and help for ourselves, reminding us of the nocturnal darkness. At those apex, the new dawn begins. Let us know how to face the impediments of life without fearing them. Each of them carries a specific message. This is a challenge that you treasure patience. That other one impels you to the sublimation of the ability to love in the crucible of ordeal. If we think about it, we are here experiencing on earth. And as we live here, we go back to the spiritual world. That's true, we learn on both sides. That's true, we can learn as much as we learn from here. We learn in here on earth, we also learn in the spiritual life. However, it's here that we put in practice everything that we have learned here and on the other side. So let's take in consideration that all difficulties that we are experiencing in here is a lesson in our school system. How difficult is this lesson to learn? That shows how is your level of progress. Wow, it's super difficult. So what do I need to do in order to overcome these difficulties? What do I need? What is missing in my learning experiencing that I am going through this? Have you realized that we go through cycles and certain situations seems to be happening over and over in our lives? And sometimes we say, oh, it's an external factor that makes me go through this. But if you're experiencing over and over the same situation, what is your contribution to that? Because for sure, the people around, the situation around is not exactly the same. And if you are experiencing again and again and again something similar, might not be exactly the same, but something similar, what are you doing? What are we doing that is provoking that situation to happen? So let us stop being victims in life, and let us be responsible for what is happening to us. What can I do not to live this type of experience again? And if we really work into it, we will find that we might experience again that kind of same, and we will see that it's not as hard to deal with. I say, okay, oops, again, let me work on that. Oh, that situation, I think I already know the patterns, right? So let me make a turn in here and not go through that type of experience again. There is in psychology a little story of a man that goes through a street, and as it's walking, it falls in a hole and get out of the hole, like cursing everyone, this and that. Next day, back again, same street, fall into the same hole. And that happens a few times until the person is talking, there is a hole in the street, there is a hole in the street, and what happens? Fall again in the hole. And that continues for some time until the person thinks, oh, there is a hole, right there. And then the person's turn around. The next time, say, let me take another street because you know what? I'm tired of even seeing that hole. And takes a new street. And maybe you're going to find another hole there, but it's a new experience. And we'll learn to look into the difficulties and the problems that life might be bringing, right? So these little stories is good for us to have an idea. If I am recycling a problem, if this situation is happening in my life over and over, why fall for the same hole? Be aware. What is in there that I can do? Maybe that's the other person that is causing the problem. Well, the hole was there. It was not me that did that hole. But yet, if I'm not paying attention, I'm going to fall in it. So the problem is there. If I'm going to go through that street, guess what? The problem's going to be there, right? So let's think about that. So going back to the Spirit's book, Hope and Consolations, chapter 1, Earthly Joys and Sorrows, that chapter tells us that people who are positive about their future destinies view their physical life as a temporary station. It is for them a momentary stopover at an awful hotel. They easily find solace from the fleeting frustrations of their journey. It keep talking about that. It's just really to look for what is happening in my life and what do I want to go through and what is my destiny. There is a psychologist, the name does not show, I will remember, but he said that we can go through almost everything. As long as we have a purpose, we can do it. And if someone, Viktor Frankl, I knew I was going to remember. So he was a Jewish, and he ended up in one of the concentration camps. And he was able to live in those concentration camps for a very long time. And he realized that those that have a purpose in life, that they want to meet their family members, that they want to do something, they want for the world to know what was happening to them, they were able to survive. The other ones that did not, they were the ones that got sick, killed themselves, or something else. So let's have a purpose. And as spiritists, we already know that we have one purpose, is to be as perfect as possible. And right there, it is amazing because it gives us this opportunity to know that it's not tomorrow that is going to happen, but we are going towards that direction. So what is our future destinies? We already know. So how do I go that way? And the more I go astray, the longer it's going to take. But that's it. But that is our destiny. So let's think about that. And Emmanuel going to finish saying, above all, let us learn to decipher the enigmas of existence in the workshop of eternal good. Serve and understand, serve and support, serve and build, serve and benefit. Thy troubles, thy blessings. In them and for them, you will find the necessary stimulus so that you do not rush into the cliffs of pride, nor do you incarcerate yourselves in the traps of doldrums, proceeding step by step on your journey of refinement and ascension. Serve, 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 right? We don't want to hear this word. But that's what makes a difference in our lives. Because when we are serving, most likely we don't have the time to be complaining. When we are serving, we are with others that are in need sometimes bigger than ours. And so we understand that, yes, we are going through sufferings and pains, but you know what? When we serve, that suffering and that pain seems to be smaller. When we go to a type of volunteer work, for some reason, for that tiny bit moment that we are volunteering, that we are serving, our pain kind of disappear for a moment, right? Have any one of you come to a Spirit Center and during of the lecture, not feeling well as you came in here, feel at least during the lecture a little better? I have been in that situation a few times, and I was so much better. And when I stepped out, what happened? It came all over again. And I said, wow, that was so good when I was in there. Because as we pay attention to something else, as we put our vibrations higher, when we are in a process of serving, especially when we are in a process of serving, our body reacts differently. So let's think about that and rethink what we are doing. How much free time do we have in hands? What can we do extra? And it's amazing how many groups have been together after the pandemics and is starting new volunteer works. And it's amazing to see how many very, very young people doing that. And it's awesome. And sometimes we are just complaining. So let's stop complaining and looking into what life has to offer, because life offers a lot. Sometimes we are complaining so much that we forget or we don't see, we are blind to see the opportunities that life also presents to us. So with that being said, I think our difficulties depend on what we are doing with the challenges that life presents to us. Sometimes our difficulties might be huge, but we feel like this because we are walking with Jesus, and most likely we are being carried by him, right? And sometimes our problems are huge, although for some other people, oh, but are you sure you're complaining about that? Ah, that's nothing, which is not true, not right to do it. But how many times we hear that? And it might be because we are focusing too much into the problems and not enough into the solutions. Let's think about that and take in the warnings Emmanuel sent us to review our attitudes, to review the way we look into challenges, the way we look into the lessons of life. And so we hope always that we will feel the presence of God within us, because he's always present, but not always we reach out, right? So I wish for all of us to have a great week and be able to really and truly see the experiences that is in there for us to learn something. Bless everyone.
Thank you very much, Claudia. Very inspiring talk. One silence at a time, one drop of love at a time, one new street at a time, right? Okay, so now we are going to go to the second part of our meeting.